can't access my video. Welcome to another conversation at Corner. It did for a second, so hopefully we're talking about Genesis.
We should try again.
We're talking about Joseph. I did it. Welcome to another Corner conversation. That's the one. I do it wrong every time. I said welcome to another.
It's a conversation on.
I said conversation. Okay. Well, I can't even say welcome. Welcome to another Corner's conversation.
No, it's welcome to a conversation.
I know that was. I tried to say a conversation, but I didn't.
You don't need to say corner.
I know. I tried, you guys. Welcome to another conversation on Genesis. We're talking about Joseph.
2 weeks left. It's official.
Here we go.
How many minutes did that take?
There is an insight of Genesis from the beginning to the end.
The end of the beginning.
End of the beginning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have? I don't do favorites very well. Do you have a favorite book of the Bible or story in the Bible or any of those things?
I do really like Joshua.
I really like Exodus and Leviticus.
Yeah, I not like
That is not shocking to me.
I don't understand the Leviticus thing.
Elisha.
That's good.
That cracks fun.
I like Leviticus a lot more after we talked through it last summer.
I wouldn't know.
I know you weren't there, and I missed you. And we did. We really missed you.
Really missed you.
But
Also up and back.
Really?
Yeah, I love that he's just being all honorary. And then at the end, he's like, okay, you're right. God's God still. That's good stuff. How about you? Joe?
I have a lot of favorites. I like the Exodus a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like Elijah and Elisha a lot. There's a lot of narratives that are fun. Like I guess my real answer is I like the Gospels a lot. Like that's I can spend a lot of my time in that.
Yeah, I like that. I do like Genesis. I've enjoyed kind of digging into some of the stories, but it also makes me really mad. Like all of these people are.
Yeah, that's the thing that we've looked at over and over in this narrative. The power of the narrative is in its repetition, which generally we don't use repetition as a tool as much as biblical literature.
They're not quite as not quite as much.
Yep. And it is when we do, so there are topical series in church world, which you just pick a general topic or a genre or whatever and just spend weeks or days talking about specific topics. Then there is contextual series, which we do almost exclusively, pretty close.
I feel like topical is way more like, for me, it was way more youth group.
Yeah, it can be. But in the contextual, we're having a portion of text and walking through. And one of the beauty of contextual is that it gives you an opportunity to feel the intent of the author, the intent of what God is really trying to focus on the text. The challenge of it is that when the use of repetition, you can have massive amounts of scriptural text that you just go, how many times, the point of this again today, the point of this again today. And to embrace that is important as opposed to going, I know. Well, that seems easier when somebody says, I know I'm not supposed to sin. Well, that doesn't necessarily always change much. And so Genesis is.
Genesis, yes.
Genesis is.
If you have more than one Genesis, like if Phil Collins helped to get one band,
I think it probably still is Genesis.
Genesis story, Genesis.
Phil Collins was suing that other band, Genesis.
You can't have
multiple starts.
But there's a lot of starting
Genesis.
There's
Genesis.
This isn't the only.
Okay, so
But you could say like all four of us had a Genesis, so all four of us had Genesis.
We all had different Genesis.
They're all different beginnings. But
the Hyundai fancy
There are
car.
multiple Genesis.
Genesis.
The Genesis, nice Genesis.
Yeah, but like there's multiple Hyundai fancy cars. What do you say? Look at all those.
They're Genesises. The name of it, the Genesis. What?
Well,
I'll say something about repetition before we get too derailed. repetition of the Bible is okay. But when modern day people, you said we don't use it as much. When modern day people write in a repetitive style, I cannot do it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to throw him under the bus for a second. He's a good dude. He's got good thoughts. Like here's his books. N.T. Wright.
Oh, yeah.
N.T. Wright's books could be a quarter of the length they are because he says the same thing.
That's true.
Over.
Yeah.
And over.
I love sitting in a sermon on a Sunday morning where the pastor really wants to make the point. And so he says it, or she says it. No, this is sarcasm. I really hate it.
Okay, I was just trying.
When she says it or he says it multiple times, but just
be
slightly
clear. It's very rarely she, because
I know,
she's
but
smarter.
she's are smarter. Well, that's good. Okay. Well, when whoever the preacher is, says it, and they say it just slightly different, but like 3 to 5 different times, I'm just like, end me. Like, this has been
Because
2 hours of me wanting to pound my head against the wall.
you can
2 hours?
Well, once it hits that, don't you want to hit somebody?
I never sat in 2 hours.
Or a service.
Yeah.
That-
Well, once it reaches an hour, even if it's the same repetitive thing over and over again, I lose my mind.
Sometimes going to authors or going to sermons, those moments, people get their money's worth type of mentality. Because a book, probably really good books, could be a pamphlet.
Yeah.
A lot of them, because here's an idea. And so,
I appreciate the idea.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think repetition, if it's done well, I think is important.
It has to be done well, though. That's hard.
You should ask sometime, not during this, but you should ask my wife how I feel about repetition and N.T. Wright and all that, and she'll have some things to say because
The problem is that anything worth learning or growing in or getting better at, repetition is the key to, like, one of the keys to success in that. Like, you think of, like, you go to the gym, you're literally doing the same thing over and over and over again, or you want to get good at something, or schooling, like so much of schooling. And I like N.T. Wright, but I do find, like, in school when we were reading N.T. Wright, I found myself just like trying to get the point and then just like flying through big chunks of his text, because he says something, and if you get the point there, you really don't need to read like the next 2 chapters.
Yeah.
Well, and I think repetition is not a bad thing when the idea comes in different ways. I think that's important. But
It's like an object lesson, like a repetition. Like, I feel like living life, there's repetition, but if I'm sitting and someone's talking to me or I'm reading something that just says the same thing over, like that kind of repetition, like that's just, but like when I go out and I'm experiencing that experience of whatever the repetitive thing is, like that's a lesson I'm more likely to learn.
Well, I think whether it's N.T. Wright or Genesis size, I do think that the power of repetition is in participating in it, and that's been I've really felt it as we've gone through this for text as a whole. Is that it's an invitation to, from different perspectives, to go through the repetition of God as a creator and a creator of opportunity to have a relationship with Him. You know, it goes back to chapter 1, chapter 2, that we were created, and He said it is good, and we were created in His image. And then just instantly, humanity has mucked it up. Mucked? And it messed things up. And
There's a lot of different words you can use.
okay.
Almost not saying
And so, but then the repetition that we have to be participant in is that feel, know, see, experience, like hold it, like squeeze it tight. This reality that God is in the mess of things being messy. God is a restoration of opportunity to have relationship. And the restoration of opportunity to have relationship does not alleviate the mess. God loves us in the midst of the mess. And it's been spiraling and repeat over and over to where we come to Joseph now, where family is still broken, and it will continue to be broken for generations to come, but yet opportunity of relationship was truly available.
I love the dictionary So I looked up Genesis again. And the second definition of Genesis is capital G Genesis, which is the first book of the Bible. But at the end of the did you know portion, it says, today we use Genesis, lowercase g, to refer to the creative beginnings of much smaller things, but never unimportant ones. That's just fascinating. That's like, you would never have a Genesis of something that's
Unimportant.
which is really weird, but interesting. Sorry.
What exactly? I'll name
Cool. I think what's interesting about like the repetition in Genesis in the story and the dysfunction, like this is the genesis of the Israelites is a story, and it is such a broken, dysfunctional family. Like it's difficult to feel like your origins came from such brokenness. I mean, I think that's normal. Like I feel like a lot of us all today have families where the origins are a bit broken. But I think like when you look back at your history, like I feel like I've heard stories where like there's that, that one uncle nobody talks about, like you look at your history and your genealogy and you're like, there's some hush hush things. But it's like, this is where we come from.
And the rule is if you don't have an uncle that you talk about, you are that uncle.
You are that.
If you were never given a nickname, you're the one who gets the nicknames.
Yeah. But so coming back to Joseph, coming back to Joseph and in all of this is that is the ultimate of this narrative. It comes to this pinnacle moment where Joseph is standing in front of his brothers. He's in leadership in Egypt, and he looks at them and he goes, "Don't be upset. Don't worry. Don't fret. God has brought all of this moment. You selling me, me being a slave here, me rising and falling and being forgotten, all this, it's all worked out so that our family can be provided for. God's got it." And this picture of, again, God being a restorer for opportunity relationship, it's being played out in a lot of layers here. Is that God is providing physically, God is providing for family restoration, God is providing for relationship family restoration, and the logic of it all, or the tangible, well, at least everything is okay now. Mm-hmm. That's a jump of faith, not just a moment where if his brothers would have come to Joseph and said, "You need to be okay with this," it doesn't work.
No, and I love like when I think like we've talked about Joseph and maybe his character of it in this moment. And it's like, why is he? Because he goes into these moments where he's kind of testing the brothers to see if they've changed, if he can be honest about who he is with them. And because he hasn't, like in the story we're talking about, he doesn't tell them right away who he is. And when they first come and ask for grain, like he throws them all in prison. And then he's like, all right, you can all go back except for one. And he sends them with money and with food to feed the family and all this. And then asks for them to bring Benjamin back, his younger brother. And it's like, they could take all that money. They could take the grades. They could just never come back. They could leave Simeon in prison, just like they did to Joseph. They threw him in a pit. They could just leave him there, never come back, forget about him. And then it's like, now they send him back, and Joseph just waits. Like, has he changed? Have they changed? Are they going to do the same thing? Are they going to forget about us? And they go back and they tell Jacob, the dad, we have to bring Benjamin. And then Jacob's like, no, you're not taking my son, my favorite son. Again, it's like he's got a new favorite, right? He's replaced Joseph with Benjamin. You can't take him. If you take him, I'll die. If something happens to him, I'll die. Like all these. Like Jacob can't let Benjamin go back. And then it's like they run out of food. They have to go back again. And so they send him back with double the gifts. And Jacob is like, if anything happens to him, like first Reuben's like, if something happens to Jacob, you can kill my two sons. Mm-hmm. And then Judah promises, like, I will be responsible for Benjamin. And I will, like, if anything happens, I will be responsible. So they go back, and like Joseph stokes the jealousy of the brothers again. Like they come back. First of all, Benjamin's the favorite, and then they come back and then they eat a meal with Joseph, and Joseph gives them he gives Benjamin 5 times the portion than he gives the brothers. And then like I feel like he's like stoking that jealousy again, and then sends him back with money and food, and then sneaks a cup into Benjamin's to be caught and to be like caught red-handed that he was stealing, make it look like Benjamin was stealing from Joseph. And then the guards come and they search the bags and they find it, and like they all the brothers just throw themselves on the ground before Joseph, begging him, please don't take my brother. This is our brother. This is going to end our father's life and all of this. And then Judah's like, take me instead. Like, I will go in his place. Just send Benjamin back. And Joseph then finally says, no, I'm your brother. Like, it's like Joseph had to see that the brothers had changed before he told them who he was. And he just weeps and he says, I am Joseph. I am the brother that you saw was dead. I am the one. And it's like, I don't know, like, it's just beautiful how, I mean, it is kind of hard and difficult to see this testing, but it's also just watching the brothers change and be different than they were is pretty, I don't know. I think it's kind of amazing to watch how they wanted to get rid of the favorite son. They left him. And like in the scripture, it says something like, we watched his distress. We watched Joseph in the pit begging for his life, and we ignored him. And then we see this change of events where they can't go through this again with their dad. And I don't know, like, I just think a lot has changed. It's pretty amazing.
And I mean, at the next week in our final week in Genesis, the brothers prove that they still don't really trust Joseph.
Yeah.
And so, which again is in the repetition, is that relationship is incredibly complex. Can you feel how complex it is in this family? This is how the Israelites would say, this is our family origin. In us, we can feel our own complexities in relationship with other people, but yet in the midst of it, relationship is available. Mm-hmm. And so change is important, but it doesn't alleviate the consequences.
No.
And even with consequences, there still is opportunity for relationship, and to walk in that is so stinking hard. There are a bunch of theological viewers that we're going to give opportunity for people to develop the right definitions to. And the thing that I think is really powerful in understanding the difference again between the simple of atheist, agnostic, believing, not believing, seeing how God is active or not active, all these different things, is that they're all variable. It's not like there's an on-off switch, pass-fail for any of these things. These things are always on the move. And that's seems to be what's being walked out with Joseph and his brothers, is that they're constantly trying to figure out who is God, who is our family, and seeing those things moving over time.
I feel like a lot of times, like the alternate belief systems or some of these things, especially for those of us who grow up at the church, they like are really vilified, is like avoid these things. When, like, I think one thing I love about Corner is like the emphasis on trying to help people seek spirituality, and if sometimes that means that we dip our toes in and walk in some of these different theological or philosophical approaches to life, I actually think those things, like in that process, brings you to such a better understanding of who Christ is.
Yeah.
And to not be afraid of those things. Like, I feel like so often the church is so like, we have to protect what we think, or protect, we have to stop people from thinking those things or experiencing those things. And it's really hard when you have people close to you who, have a season of life where they venture away from church and faith and Jesus. But like, also I think the call is like we should have hope. Like, at least, like, for me, I know I have people in my life, and it's the challenge I constantly give myself is like, be excited that they're being honest about where they're at.
Yeah.
And have hope that the work that God is doing in them is fulfilled or completed, or helps you them. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, we're ending with Jesus was hanging out with people that were complex in their beliefs, and there was grumbling about it, and so some people that would fit in some theological perspectives, cultural worldview, morality perspectives, they were all complex. And so Jesus shares 3 parables of a lost sheep, lost coin, and a lost son. And these parables could be of beating the sheep for wandering off, devaluing or giving up on the coin, or scolding the son when he comes back. But the beauty of it, I mean, it's so over the top. The celebration of being found, it's incredible. And it's and so as we process not only our own complexities, but the complexities of others and what is believed, what is thought, to celebrate the choice of walking towards Christ is incredibly beautiful. Just as Joseph, with all reason not to, and without being forced to, goes, okay, I'm going to trust that all this was God has got us here. And I'm not going to be bitter or judgmental or full of rage, or I'm not going to belittle my brothers for the rest of their lives. But I'm choosing to, again, walk towards closer to God in this. And that is from the parables that Jesus shares. That's like the swooped into his arms. He's so excited. He's so excited about that. And again, it's giving a dog a treat as opposed to, slapping them on the nose. And I feel like we often feel like God is going to slap us on the nose for having a struggle moment.
I don't know. It just continues to reiterate that God is God, and people are people, and people are not God. And God does not need to step down to what we think, while we get to have a glimpse into who he is and the goodness. So even with this story of Joseph, it's God's got a plan. Joseph's in the dungeon. God's got a plan. Joseph sees his brothers again. God's got a plan. So God's the hero and we're not.
That's good. See you next week for the very last episode on Genesis. Genocide.